today, while his colleagues had earlier arrived in 2 coaster buses. VP News understands that the meeting is believed to be linked to the recent leadership crisis that rocked the Lagos Assembly. You do know that Obasa was impeached by some lawmakers. However, he was later reinstated following the intervention of political stakeholders, particularly the Governor's Advisory Council. Despite Obasa's reinstatement, tensions remain within the House, with unresolved grievances stemming from his impeachment. Tinubu's meeting with the lawmakers is expected to address these issues and foster unity within the Assembly. The meeting is coming amidst a fresh crisis that erupted in the Lagos State House of Assembly as Speaker Mudashiru Obasa and his former deputy Mojisola Miranda clash over the alleged withdrawal of 5 billion naira from the Assembly's account for the purchase of Toyota Land Cruiser SUVs for lawmakers. Investigations reveal that the conflict stems from Miranda's decision to approve the disbursement of the funds just days after she replaced Obasa as Speaker following his brief impeachment in January. Miranda, who became the first female Speaker of the Lagos Assembly on January 13, approved the purchase of 40 units of the 2025 Toyota Land Cruiser SUVs, one for each lawmaker. Now, the Lagos State House of Assembly, led by Speaker Mudashiru Obasa, has reportedly requested the deployment of armed security forces to enhance the security of the Assembly complex. The request arises amidst a leadership crisis and conflicting judicial rulings that have plunged the state's legislative body into disarray. A confidential letter directed to the Lagos State Commandant of the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, NSCDC, signed by the Clerk of the House, Obi Onafeko, disclosed Obasa's appeal for increased security measures at the Assembly complex located in Alausa, Ikeja. According to the document, additionally indicates that personnel from the NSCDC will collaborate with 20 private security guards to ensure the safety of the premises. This request arose following the clarification that from the National Industrial Court that it did not mandate the reinstatement of Clerk Onefeko, contrary to claims made by Obasa's faction. The court merely instructed both parties to uphold peace while awaiting for the hearing. During the most recent court session on March 12, 2025, Justice MN SOA expressed astonishment at Onafeko's aggressive takeover of the Assembly Secretariat, which involved the use of security personnel to remove acting clerk Taiwo Otto. Counsel for the Assembly, O.O. Uniri, a senior advocate of Nigeria, accused Onafeko of manipulating the judicial system and disseminating false information regarding his supposed reinstatement. In the meantime, the court has set March 18 for the hearing of all outstanding implications, or rather applications, for the prolonging the resolution of the crisis. Meanwhile, reports are that the leadership turmoil within the Lagos Assembly has been exacerbated by a multi-billion naira procurement of official vehicles for lawmakers. Now, moving on to Rivers State, the Pan-Niger Delta Elders Forum, PANDEF, has strongly criticized the action of the Martins Amawule-led Rivers State House of Assembly, describing it as provocative after lawmakers prevented Governor Simlai Fubara from entering the Assembly complex to present the 2025 budget. Reacting to this development today, a PANDEF chieftain, Anaps Sarah Ibe, disclosed to Vanguard via an exclusive telephone interview that denying the governor access was not just an insult to Fubara, but to the entire people of Rivers State. Also, PANDEF's reaction comes just hours after President Bola Ahmed Tinubu held a high-level meeting with the leaders of the forum at the council chamber of the State House, Abuja. During the meeting, the governors, or rather the president, advised the leaders to urge Fubara to honor the Supreme Court's ruling. However, shortly after the meeting, pro-Wike lawmakers reportedly locked the governor out of the Assembly complex. Sarah Ibe condemned the actions of the lawmakers, insisting that Fubara has demonstrated his willingness for peace, but the opposition remains unyielding. Meanwhile, the Rivers State House of Assembly resumed plenary today amid reports that the lawmakers loyal to the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory prevented Governor Simlai Fubara from presenting the 2025 budget. The lawmakers already seated inside the chamber as Speaker Martin Amawule and other officials carrying the mace made their way into the hall. Earlier, there was a dramatic standoff which unfolded at the Assembly complex where Fubara had accused the legislators of locking the gates to prevent him from presenting the 2025 appropriation bill. The governor, who arrived at the complex early in the morning, expressed frustration over the situation, stating that multiple attempts to contact Speaker Amawale and other lawmakers had been ignored. He warned that failing to pass the budget would disrupt governance and stall ongoing projects crucial to the state's development. A video of the incident, which was shared on social media by a user called Prince Yemi Itodo, showed the assembly complex under lock and key, with reports suggesting security operatives had been ordered to vacate the premises. This blockade marks the latest escalation in the ongoing political conflict between Fubara and his predecessor Wike, whose loyalists hold a majority in the assembly. The crisis has also drawn the attention of the president, who recently urged both sides to implement the Supreme Court-backed political agreement aimed at resolving the dispute. Meanwhile, the Rivers State Governor Sim Fubara has reaffirmed his readiness to represent the 2025 budget to the State House of Assembly whenever the lawmakers are prepared to receive it. He made this known today while he was addressing residents of Kana local government area during the commissioning of health facilities. His statement came shortly after he was barred from accessing the assembly quarters. Expressing displeasure over the lawmakers' actions and their disrespect to the governor, he insisted that he had properly informed the speaker, Martin Amawale, about his visit. He was denied entry into the official quarters of the Rivers State House of Assembly on Aba Road, Port Harcourt. Now, Yoruba Nation activist Chief Sunday Adeyemo, also known as Sunday Igboho, has approached the Supreme Court in Abuja to challenge the Court of Appeal's decision that nullified the 20 billion naira in exemplary and aggravated damages awarded to him against the federal government. The case originates from the July 1, 2021 raid on Igboho's Ibadan residence by operatives of the Department of State Services, an operation that resulted in the death of 2 individuals and significant destruction of property, including vehicles and other valuables. Following the raid, Igboho filed a lawsuit against the DSS and Attorney General of the Federation at the Oyo State High Court, alleging violations of his fundamental human rights in September 2021, when Justice Ladiran Akintola ruled in his favor, awarding him 20 billion naira in damages. However, in August 2022, the Court of Appeal in Ibadan, led by Justice Muslim Hassan, overturned the ruling, declaring the judgment illegal and damages excessive. In response, Igboho, through his counsel, Yomi Aliyu, filed an appeal with the Supreme Court, which he stated that there are 19 grounds of appeal, consolidated into 11 key issues for determinations. Defendants in the case include the Attorney General of the Federation, the DSS, and the Director of the DSS in Oyo State. Court documents which were obtained today outline several key points for Supreme Court review. Igboho seeks clarification on whether his fundamental rights were violated, arguing that his case should be considered a fundamental rights enforcement proceeding rather than a tort case as ruled by the lower court. He challenges the appellate court's decision to disregard his plenary objections, stating that they were valid despite being included in his proof. These preliminary objections, according to him, questions whether the respondent's brief filed beyond the stipulated deadline should be deemed valid and whether Igboho's subsequent filing waived his lateness. Igboho also is contesting whether an extension application to the file additional records can rectify the initial failure to submit original records on time. He argues that the lower court erred in ruling that his claims for special damages were unsupported by evaluation report, asserting that uncontracted affidavit evidence and expert invoices sufficiently documented his losses. Igboho insisted that the government bears the burden of proving that illegal arms were found in his home, especially since the DSS confiscated CCTV footage during the raid. He further questions whether the trial judge assessed the aggravated and exemplary damages fairly and in line with established guidelines. The Supreme Court is now expected to review the appeal and determine whether Igboho's claim for damages against the federal government should be reinstated. You're currently listening to the World News right here on Voice of the People, 92.3 FM. We'll take a very short break. When we return, we'll head into a news analysis segment where I'll be joined via the telephone with Barrister Fred Nzako, who is a political, national and social affairs commentator. Do kindly stay with us. Good evening, Barrister Friday Zakwan. Thank you for joining us today on the World News at 6.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, Barrister Fred. Let me start off with this and then we'll move on to the case in Rivers. Now, Yoruba Nation activist Chief Adeyemo Sunday, also known as Sunday Igboho, has approached the Supreme Court in Abuja to challenge the Court of Appeal's decision that nullified the 20 billion naira in exemplary and aggravated damages awarded to him against the federal government. You'll recall that sometime in 2021, there was a raid on Igboho's Ibadan residence by operatives of the Department of State Services, an operation that resulted in the death of 2 individuals and significant destruction of property, including vehicles and other valuables. In fact, when that occurred, the DSS also took the CCTV. They destroyed the CCTV, so obviously there seems to be no video or images to corroborate his claim. But he is saying that based on that raid, Igboho actually filed a lawsuit against the DSS and the Attorney General of the Federation at the Oyo State High Court, alleging violations of his fundamental human rights, whereby in 2021, Justice Ladinro Akintola ruled in his favor, awarding him 20 billion naira in damages. He is stating that his 20 billion naira should be returned to him. A court had ruled initially countering the judgment from the appeal court, saying that Sunday Igboho's claim for 20 billion naira was excessive on those who need to defend, that is the federal government, the DSS, and the Attorney General of the Federation. The question is, do you think the Supreme Court will give a valid judgment or a valid ruling based on his petition against the DSS, against the AGF, and also against the Supreme Court on 20 billion naira?
Well, Esther, I can tell you that it is not. It is not fair to be speculative on issues that are before superior courts of record. Speculation on such issue will neither change anything. Rather, it will just be mere speculation. And I do not think that such a speculation will be necessary. Rather, I wish to say that officials of government must always know that there are consequences for wrong actions, such that even when carrying out one's legitimate duties, one has to be conscious of the consequences, especially the law enforcement agencies of government, because they have the authority to wield the gun, they have the authority to use the stick approach, but they also have the responsibility to use those weapons in very, very justifiable and reasonable manner. And of course, if they fail to do so, one of the consequences is that there could be lawsuits. And recall that for every lawsuit where there is judgment debt, the debt is paid by the federal government. And that is why the Office of the Attorney General was also joined in the suit, and those other agencies like the SSS joined in the suit and all that. And it is still the federal government that will pay. As we speak, there are over 100 billion naira judgment debts on the table of the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation that are yet to be paid. I will recall that during the era of President Muhammad Buhari, the then AGF, Abubakar Malami, once asked for about 80 billion to clear some judgment debt that was hanging on the neck of the federal government and its agencies. Whether that money was released and whether the money was utilized to clear all those debts remains to be seen. And the responsibility, official responsibility demands that when law enforcement agencies act, they should have at the back of their mind that if there are consequences that involve payment of debts and money to the injured, that is the federal government that will pay. In some other countries, once you cause that, they have a way of making such deductions from your own entitlement so that you will understand that you have to carry out your duties with all manner of responsibility. We need to continue to educate our security operatives to be very, very circumspect and very responsible in their discharge of their duties so that the citizen will not only be on the same page with them, there will be cooperation and interaction that will be meaningful towards securing our land, which is very important between the citizenry and the security operatives.
All right, Barrister Fred Nzako, I'm going to place you on speaker now because a couple of our audience say they can't hear you properly. So let me put you on speaker right now. Barrister Fred, it's quite disconcerting because in August 2022, the Court of Appeal in Ibadan, led by Justice Muslim Hassan, overturned the ruling, declaring that the judgment is illegal and that the damages are excessive. Now, Igboho, through his counsel, had to now file the appeal with the Supreme Court. So the question is this: in what way was Sunday Igboho's wanting the DSS and the Attorney General of the Federation to pay him back or compensate him for the losses that they emitted in his home, the losses they caused 20 billion? In what way is that excessive? In what way as well that they declared that particular previous judgment which upheld his claim for 20 billion naira illegal and that the damages were excessive? Don't you think these conflicting court orders, rather than clarifying issues, because I'm not a lawyer, but I believe that the law is not meant to be confusing, it's not meant to be conflicting, and it's not meant to be ambiguous. When there are conflicting court orders like this from different courts of appeal, don't you think it causes chaos? Don't you think it creates a deep-rooted problem? Because the previous court has said that his case is excessive and considered it illegal. How is it illegal when you found that for the damages incurred, especially caused by the DSS, that you're saying that it's illegal and that it's excessive? 2 persons died. You destroyed his home.
There is no conflict in this matter. The High Court awarded the cost to Mr. Igboho at the High Court level. Then those who didn't like the award or who would have borne the brunt or the consequences of the award appealed the judgment. And that means place the judgment before the Court of Appeal for appellate jurisdiction and then for appellate action. Then the Court of Appeal, in its wisdom, watched that amount and said it was excessive. I do not know what they brought to the Court of Appeal. If peradventure, they ask the Court of Appeal to, in the alternative, determine what they consider reasonable compensation to Mr. Igboho, possibly that would have made the Court of Appeal to look at the amount and tweak it in a bit and decide how much Mr. Igboho should be entitled to. But if there was no such prayer and they were rigid in their application, in which case the Court of Appeal had only 2 options, either to affirm or to quash. And the Court of Appeal, in its wisdom, felt that it was excessive and not necessary, thereby quashed the judgment that awarded such 20 billion to Mr. Igboho. Now Mr. Igboho has only one option again under the law to go higher to the Supreme Court. It is now the determination of the Supreme Court that will rest the issue finally, one way or the other, either in favor of Mr. Igboho or in favor of those who are opposing the award. 20 billion is now the issue. With the judgment of the Court of Appeal, it has not given any room for adjustment of the sum.
All right.
It's a case of either this or nothing.
Okay.
And that is why the Court of Appeal decided the way it did. I do not know, and I do not also want to guess how the Supreme Court will do theirs. Until then, we can now discuss it and see whether it was right or whether it was wrong.
All right, Barrister Fred Nzako, the Rivers State House of Assembly resumed plenary today. And there are reports that the lawmakers loyal to the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, prevented the governor from representing the 2025 budget. Now, there were videos. The lawmakers were seated inside. The gate was under lock and key. And it was quite embarrassing because the governor said that he had spoken with the Martin Amawuli faction, that is those loyal to Wike, that he was coming to represent that particular budget today. They prevented him from having access. Pandef has called out the lawmakers, tell me something. This is a blatant disregard and disrespect. The president recently met with Pandaf, some elders, Nyesom Wike was there, and a couple of top echelons in Rivers State, asking that Fubara obey the court order of the order of the Supreme Court. He also disclosed that that was why he interceded the first time, because he foresaw the outcome, this current outcome. But the thing is this: if you are asking Fubara to obey the Supreme Court order, what about the Martin Amawile faction, who are hell-bent in ensuring that Fubara's administration is frustrated? Or do you think they really want to impeach him because he cannot work if they don't want to work with him?
For two people to shake hands, both of them should determine to shake hands, and each of them should bring out their hand so that there will be handshake. When one person brings out his hand for handshake and the other one places his hand at his back, obviously there will not be any handshake. It takes two to tango. For there to be peace in Rivers State, the two main political gladiators in this debacle must determine to seek for peace. If not, there can never be peace. After the Supreme Court judgment, the governor said openly in a broadcast that he was ready to obey and carry out the orders and judgment of the court. And he put machinery in motion to that effect. Last week, we heard that he invited Mr. Martin Amawile and his team, the principal officers of the House, for a meeting, and they said he did not invite them appropriately. Meanwhile, the Martin Amawile team gave the governor an ultimatum of 48 hours to present the budget. Many people criticize such ultimatum as being too arrogant and too brash, and that they should approach this matter with the same olive branch which the governor has waved before them. But they seem to be not ready for any peace. Possibly the script they are playing has not been exhausted, and they want to continue. Act 1 scene 1 has passed. They possibly would want Act 2 scene 2, and the script and the macabre dance continues. From all indications, there is this feeling that in the minds of this man that they have pinned the governor down, and that in a manner of speaking, he will crawl on his knees to come and beg them, forgetting that the entire people of Rivers State voted the governor and gave him mandate to lead them. They were voted by their own constituents, which is 1/30. In fact, there are 32 seats in the Rivers State House of Assembly. So each person has 1/32 of the population of Rivers in terms of arithmetic mandate. The governor has 32/32 in terms of arithmetic mandate. How do you expect that the man who has 1/32 will ride roughshod on the man who has 32/32? If the governor has presented an olive branch for them to have peace through reconciliation and move Rivers forward, natural reasoning demands that the House of Assembly would also replicate same. But if the House of Assembly is still playing to the beat and the drum beat of their organ at the top, that means the organ at the top is not yet ready to have peace in Rivers State.
All right, Barrister.
By the time the governor exhausts his patience, what will be the reaction may be what nobody will like. And that is why we continue to ask that peace and wisdom should reign in Rivers. And everybody who is a well-meaning patriotic citizen of Nigeria can only wish Rivers people well and pray that they find peace in this unnecessary, selfish, idiosyncratic debacle The earlier they find peace, the better for the people and the better for the gladiators themselves.
All right, Barrister Fred Nzakwa, I sincerely do appreciate you taking your time to give us your insight. Good evening.
Many thanks.
Thank you very much. And that's a wrap on the World News at 6 on Voice of the People, 90.3 FM. My name is Esther Wachuku. Join me at 7 for the Evening Rush. Do have yourself an amazing evening. Bye for now.